Hey, what's up guys? So in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Uniden R1 and R3 and taking a look at how it compares to all the other top radar detectors available on the market. A lot of you guys have been watching the videos that I've been posting over the past couple days and obviously been really excited about the Uniden, and you've got like two different questions. Number one, some of you guys are saying, hey, I already have a radar detector and does it make sense for me to upgrade to the Uniden? Another one is people who don't yet have a radar detector and they're like, well, I've been watching your videos. I had this radar detector in mind and I've been, wanting to get it, but then the Unidens came out and now I'm not actually sure which ones I want to get. So in this video, I want to talk about the Unidens in a little bit more detail, and I want to actually compare them to a lot of the other top contenders available on the market. Now, quickly going over the Uniden, as you guys know, we've been talking a lot about the performance lately. This guy is able to outrange a lot of the other top radar detectors on the market. Again, the benchmark has been the Escort Redline. Long-range performance is the one that all the other radar detectors are compared to. The Uniden is able to perform better than the Redline, so we now have a new long-range radar detector. Now, there's a lot more to a radar detector than just performance. For example, BSM filtering. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, this radar detector, the BSM filter, as you guys know, it's pretty good. Coming from the Uniden DFR6 and DFR7, they actually made one of the best blind spot monitoring filters available on the market. Now, it's not exactly a straight copy and paste job from the DFR7 to the R3 because of the fact that it's a completely different platform. You've got the older detectors and the newer digital detectors. You can't just copy and paste the same filtering algorithm. They have to rewrite the whole thing from scratch. So far, it's doing pretty good. A lot of us that have been beta testing the detector, we've been keeping track of which cars actually cause these Unidens to false alert. In short, it's pretty much your GM detectors, so like your Buick, GMC, Cadillac, Chevy, etc., as well as your Hondas and Acuras. Those seem to be the ones that are causing this radar detector to false. As far as what it can filter out, it filters out a lot of other cars, such as your Audis, your Mercedes, your Hyundai, semi-trucks, semis, which cause a lot of radar detectors to false. The Unidens are able to filter them out. Now, as far as what's better than the Uniden filtering, well, there's the Stinger VIP. That's the only detector I know of that's able to filter out Acuras, but that radar detector also starts at $2,500. So that's kind of a different league. We're going to be talking about that detector at the end of this video, but against the other kind of windshield mount radar detectors, this one seems pretty good. Now, that extreme sensitivity that we were talking about in terms of range can also be kind of a double-edged sword. You see, because of the fact that the detector is so sensitive, it's able to pick up a lot of signals that other radar detectors just aren't able to see, and it's for that reason that just due to the sensitivity alone, even with everything else being equal, the detector is going to be chattier, it's going to be noisier, you will get more false alerts. Now, there is something that you can do about that. The detector has a highway mode and a city mode, just like most other radar detectors. And city mode basically just reduces the sensitivity of the detector on X-band and on K-band. The idea is when you're driving around in the city, you don't need crazy long range necessarily, especially with a lot of false alerts around you, and you may want to dial back the sensitivity. With this detector, what it does is it changes the radar detector from having like astronomical, ridiculous range to backing it down closer to where a lot of the other traditional radar detectors alert. It's more sensitive than some detectors, less sensitive than others. Now, this can be really helpful in practice. This is actually how I've been running the detector, and it's been really helpful. On highway mode, you're going to get a fair number of false alerts. I mean, it can filter out a lot of BSM cars, but you also need to keep in mind that it's going to be picking up some BSM cars that other detectors may not even see because it can pick them up far away. It may pick them up across the street on the opposite side of the highway, It's just picking up more false alerts. So dialing back the sensitivity can be really helpful in practice, and that may be something that a lot of people are going to want to do. Uniden, actually, we're talking with them about the next 2 firmware updates that are coming out, and one thing that they want to do is actually give us an advanced mode, which is going to allow us to choose, how much we want to reduce the sensitivity of the detector, which can be really helpful. You may want a little bit more, a little bit less. So that's something that's going to be pretty cool. Anyway, so as far as the BSM stuff, it's looking pretty good, and being able to dial back the sensitivity helps. Now, as far as testing it, I just did a video going over the test results for long distance range. That's pretty easy to do. Put a radar gun on one end, of course, and drive towards it and see which radar detector alerts farthest away, and try a bunch of different radar guns and test courses, etc. With blind spot filtering, that's actually kind of tough to scientifically test and measure. I mean, do you go out and find or rent like 20 different blind spot cars, How do you test it. So what we've actually been doing, and kind of the way that I do it, is I'll just grab a radar detector and I'll put it up on my windshield and I'll drive around for a little while on the same typical commutes that I do with other radar detectors, and then I'll just see over time, you know, does this one tend to be a little bit noisier, a little bit quieter? Every time you drive, you're going to see different cars out there, right? So every time you drive, it's a little bit different. So it really helps to do a bunch of different runs. And so this isn't like a perfectly scientific way of doing it, and it does take time to run one detector for a little while, then switch and run another detector, and then you have other people who are testing and doing the same thing, and over time, with more sample data, we can get a better idea of how the blind spot filtering is. So because the detector is still a little bit newer, and because there's not like a great way of testing this, it's something that it's tough to pin down really specifically and say this detector is this good, or it's definitely better than this other detector. It takes time to figure out, and it's a little bit tough to really figure out. So I'm not going to be able to give you like really specific exact information on BSM filtering, and that's why. But I can give you kind of a general idea as far as what I've seen so far. Now, before we start talking about the comparisons with all the other detectors, let's quickly talk about the difference between the Uniden R1 and R3, because a number of you guys have asked about that. Performance-wise, they're identical. In terms of BSM filtering, they're identical. The only difference, other than price, is the GPS chip or lack thereof. The R3 has a GPS chip, which makes it a better detector around town. It's more well-rounded. It gives you the GPS lockout, so you can filter out known stationary false alerts, like shopping centers and speed signs. You've got low-speed muting for filtering around town, and you have red light cameras and speed camera support. There's other little things too, like it can display the speed or the direction of travel and the compass on the display, but really it's just that kind of stuff. It's GPS-based things. If you're constantly road tripping to new areas, especially on the highway, and you don't need the lockouts because you're always in new, different areas, the R1 is going to be a better choice. If you're doing a lot of driving on the highway and in the city, especially in urban areas, the R3 is going to be a better choice. Now, comparing these two detectors to the competition, there's going to be a lot of different radar detectors that I'm going to be talking about. We're going to run through all of them, only spending a couple minutes per detector, so we're not here all day. If there's any particular detector combination that you're curious about, over here I'm going to list all the different radar detectors that we're going to be talking about, as well as the time in this video of when I start talking about those detectors. So if there's a comparison that you're particularly curious about, you can just skip to that point in the video and jump right to what you want to see. Now, something I want to mention is we're going to be focusing on the very best radar detectors available on the market. These are all great radar detectors. None of them here are bad detectors. Some of them may be better suited for some people. Other detectors may be better suited for other people. There's no radar detector here that's perfect for every single person in every situation. We're actually really lucky to have a wide variety of different detectors so we can choose what works best for different people in different situations. And we're really lucky that we have a lot of different manufacturers who are producing a lot of these different products, because more competition and more products means, well, better stuff for all of us. Now let's go ahead and start with the Uniden DFR7. This is one of the detectors that a lot of you guys have been asking me about. This detector is a great bang for the buck. It's got good performance, good filtering, GPS, all that good stuff, and you can find it now for about 250 bucks. So the question is, does it make sense to get this guy, or should you step up to the R3 for $400 to get better performance? And well, how does the BSM filtering compare? Now, to be perfectly honest, I actually haven't run the DFR7 in quite a while. The reason actually has to do with the performance. You see, this detector is pretty strong on 34.7, but it's kind of weak on 33.8 and 35.5. Now, 33.8 is actually the main band that I see around here, and so I don't want a detector that's necessarily too weak. It's not bad by any means, but I would want something with a little bit better performance. Now, as it turns out, the R3 solves that issue. This guy is no longer weak on the different bands. It turns out this guy is now strong on 33.8 and 34.7 and 35.5, and on all three frequencies, it's more sensitive than the Escort Redline. So for those of you guys who are concerned about, you know, the reduced performance or whatnot, this guy does solve the issue. What about BSM filtering? That's something, because personally I haven't run the DFR7 in so long, I can't tell you for sure. But with the reduced sensitivity option, just running it in city mode in the city, it really does help. Even on the highway, I've been running it in city mode, and doing that, I'm still seeing really good performance and range, but it's dialing back the BSM pulses. So it's able to filter out most cars, again with the exceptions of your GMs and your Hondas and Acuras, and it doesn't seem like it's too sensitive to the point where it's kind of unnecessarily ridiculous either. So I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty good option in town. Again, to get the specifics of which one truly is better, that'll take a little bit of time, and I'm sure we'll find that out eventually. But this looks like it's going to be a pretty good option for people who really want to step up and have better performance and longer range. If you're looking for a good bang for the buck, however, the Uniden DFR7 is still a great choice. It's not bad by any means. You know, you still got great performance, especially on 34.7, decent on 33.8 and 35.5. K-band is good, all that kind of stuff. So for those of you guys looking for more of a bang for the buck detector, this guy, you can find it right now for about 250 bucks or so, and that's a lot of detector for the money. So for those of you guys more on a budget, you can take a look at this guy, or if you don't want the GPS, even the Uniden DFR6 at less than 200 bucks. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Escort Redline and the Beltronics Magnum. Now, these two detectors are really the ones that the Uniden has kind of outclassed. When I did my introductory video to the Unidens, I said that there were a couple detectors that have been basically rendered obsolete. I think actually a better way to phrase it is not so much to say that they've been rendered obsolete, but that there's this new detector, the Uniden, which has rendered some of the existing older detectors outclassed. And the reason I say that is, you know, I guess if this guy is obsolete, it's not necessarily going to be usable on the road. That could be a little bit debatable with K-band filtering, but this guy is still going to give you, obviously, plenty of range and performance, and it's still one of the very best radar detectors on the market. It's not like suddenly this guy is unusable and sucks or anything, you know? So I think a better way to say it is that the Uniden has now outclassed the Redline. And the reason I say that is it pretty much does everything that this guy can do, and more, better, for less money. I mean, let's run through the things real quick. If you take a look at the two detectors, I mean, the Uniden has better range. It's got all the same features, if not more, if you go for the R3. It costs less money, and it's got better filtering as well, so it literally does everything that the Redline does, but better and more for less money. So if you're looking at them head to head, I mean, at this point, there's really no reason to get the Redline instead of the Uniden. I mean, if you have the Redline, you could literally go out and sell it for around the price that it would take you to buy the brand new Uniden. You know, this guy retails for $550. You can find him online for, you know, north of $400 brand new. So if you were to go and sell this guy for around 400 bucks or so, plus minus, depending on whatever you get and fees and all that kind of stuff, you could turn around and get the Uniden. I mean, you get the R1, which is the Redline competitor. That's a $300 detector. If you want to add the GPS and all that kind of stuff too, to give you the lockouts and all that good stuff, you're looking at $400. So, which is still less than the cost of a brand new Escort Redline. So when you look at it that way, there's really not a good reason to get a Redline anymore. I could actually see Escort eventually replacing this detector. What I'm thinking that they're going to do is they've released the new Max CI and the Max CI 360. It's their new remote mount detector. It's a digital version, essentially, an upgraded version of this platform. It's got better BSM filtering. Evidently, it has better range and everything. So my guess, I don't know if they're going to do this, but what would make sense is they take the same upgraded platform that they've used in their remote detector, just like the remote version of this, 9500 CI or STIR Plus. I would think they're going to take that remote detector, make a windshield mount version of it, and put it up on the windshield, and bam, there you go. Now you have your true competitor to the Uniden R1 and R3. Now, as far as the price of that detector, knowing Escort, they're going to charge a lot of money for the detector, and so this guy is probably going to still be a better value, a better bang for the buck, a lot like how the DFR7 is compared to the Max 2, you know? So I'm sure the Escort one will have auto lockouts and whatnot, but still, I think the Uniden is going to be the detector to beat for whatever it is that Escort wants to come out as their replacement for the Redline and for the Magnum. But for those of you guys looking at these detectors, I would say with these ones, there's not really a point to buy one if you're looking to get one new. If you have one, you could turn around and sell it and upgrade to the Uniden for maybe even less money than you would get for selling this, you know? So at this point, yeah, I'd say it's a pretty solid pick to get the Uniden over the Escort and Beltronics flavors of the M3s. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Radenso Pro SE. Now, the RPSE is a very compact detector. So you can see here it's pretty tiny. The Uniden is actually really small as well. This guy is a little bit more compact than most of the other detectors too, but the RPSE is smaller still. Now, these two detectors are actually very close, very similar. They're really direct competitors. This guy is actually a high-performance, long-range detector, just like the Escort Redline. It adds the GPS chip inside, though, so you've got you know, your GPS lockouts, low-speed muting, red light camera alerts to make it that more well-rounded detector. The BSM filtering is also more effective than what you've got in the Redline. Now, the reason that up to this point that I haven't been kind of universally recommending it is for two things. Number one, the frequency display here on screen, the frequency display is still unfortunately inaccurate. It can't display a correct frequency, but what's maybe even a bigger deal are the GPS lockouts still to this day are not working properly. Radenso's been working at it for quite a while, but the lockouts for whatever reason just still aren't able to stick. You'll lock a signal out, but then you'll come back in the future and it's going to alert to you again. So you try to lock it out again, and sometimes you'll come by and it'll alert again. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's kind of annoying, you know? And so it's a detector that still, that part of it, kind of one of the biggest benefits of adding the GPS, unfortunately that part is not working. With this guy, it has the GPS lockouts, and they do work properly, which is great. So the Uniden ones work well. Performance here is better. In terms of BSM filtering, again, I'm not totally sure. I haven't run this guy in quite a while. Plus, a new firmware update came out recently, US 20, which adds some cool new features. It fixes some bugs and it changes things, and I haven't really run it, so I can't tell you, myself, in terms of BSM filtering, which one is better. In terms of performance, definitely the Uniden, but that's to be expected, right? This guy does have some other benefits, some little things, like it's currently set to auto city mode, which is kind of a way to automatically switch between highway mode for the highway and city mode for the city once you go above or below a certain speed. So that's kind of cool. It's a little bit more automated. You've got more control with this guy. You have the ability to set it into mute mode like this, and what that does is when it's in mute mode, every time you see an X-band or a K-band signal, it's going to automatically mute it for you no matter what, independent of lockouts and low-speed muting. That's kind of nice if you got somebody else in the car who's annoyed with radar detectors, or you're on the phone or something and you want to mute it, but still visually be able to see the alerts. You're able to do that here. Ka-band and laser alerts will still be alerted normally. And then once you're done, if you want to put it into normal mode, you can just disable mute mode. So you do have some really good customizability with this guy. You've got more control. The customer service with Radenso is fantastic. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best out of any manufacturer, and they're really doing a good job as far as listening to enthusiasts. So I think this is a really great option. However, if you're choosing between the two, I think overall the edge is going to have to go to the Uniden at this point, primarily because of, well, performance. You got better performance, and the GPS lockouts actually do work. The frequency display here is correct, it's accurate, whereas here it's not. So I think this guy has a lot going for it, and it's still a good choice. If you need maybe a super compact detector, that's another thing, but overall, when all is said and done, I think the Uniden is going to be a better choice than the RPSE. So this guy retails for $500, this guy retails for $400. I guess that's another, big deal too. $100 cheaper for better performance and functional lockouts. So I think really that's the big things that are going to separate these two detectors if you're choosing between the RPSE and the Uniden R3. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Radenso XP. Now, the Radenso XP I really like as a quiet detector, especially in urban areas. This detector, it's got, again, your GPS lockouts, low speed muting, all that good stuff, and the blind spot filter on this guy is really good. So basically, driving around with this guy, I don't get a crazy ton of false alerts, which I really, really like. Out here, at least where I drive personally, there's not a ton of radar enforcement, and so I want something that's kind of more on the quiet side, especially if I've got my girlfriend in the car or somebody else, So I prefer a detector that's going to be leaning more towards the quiet side, and it's for this reason that this is a detector that I've actually been running for a little while now, and I've been quite liking it. Now, I don't really like the fact that, like the RPSC, the lockouts here also still don't work very well. They do work, but there's times when it will alert to a signal that's previously been locked out, and I really wish Radenso would get that stuff straight. So the lockouts, I mean, if they got that nailed, this would be like a fantastic urban detector, like no question, but with that issue, it's still kind of a little bit wonky. So with that said, comparing it to the R3, again, we've got better sensitivity. This guy has, good performance, not sensational performance, but good performance and good filtering. Well, great filtering. This guy has great performance, and filtering seems pretty good. Again, if we kind of back down the sensitivity, so it's a little bit more on par with a detector like this, it seems to be a lot more reasonable, and is really only falsing to the same cars that will trigger this guy, like your GMs and your Hondas and Acuras, So it looks like this is a great pick as well. Plus, again, your lockouts work. The frequency display on this guy sometimes can be a little bit inaccurate. With this guy, it's on point, which is really nice. So these guys are actually the same price. They both retail for $400. If you look at the R1 versus the SP is $50 less. It's $250 as opposed to $300. You do have a little bit more of a discount there, but With this guy, I think one of the biggest questions really at this point is going to be the BSM filtering. You know, is this guy significantly quieter than this guy? I'm not really sure. I've been driving around with this guy in city mode for a couple days, and it seems to be doing really well. So I think it's very likely, you know, that this could potentially even be a direct competitor to the XP, especially considering they're the same price, you know. So that's, I think, one of the big things to find out is, you know, quietness. For those of you guys who want that, I'm one of them. Is this guy a better choice than this one? I mean, you've got the
mute on.
The mute option. I do wish there was the ability to do
mute off.
Mute on and off with the voice turned off, you know, that kind of stuff. Like if you could get the voices completely disabled, you can do that here, but with this guy you still have some voice alerts, which I think is kind of weird. But for those of you guys who want voice alerts, no big deal, I guess. But I think this is a great option here for a detector. I think it's one that might also be, you know, potentially outclassed by this guy because you can have significantly better performance when you need it, and then you can also back it down for when you don't to get a little bit quieter experience. So you don't have the option here of really ramping it up to monster sensitivity like you do with this guy. So between the two, I think this guy might be the better choice as well, but it might be a little bit too early to say definitively. Next, we're going to take a look at the Escort Passport Max 2. Now this guy is a good plug-and-play radar detector. This is designed for your general purpose person. You just put it on the windshield and it's very plug-and-play, very automatic. You don't have to be a radar detector expert. You just, again, put it on your windshield and it kind of does everything for you. The GPS lockouts on this guy are automatic, so you don't have to manually lock the signals out and figure out what's real or what's a false alert. You know, that's actually pretty handy. So the more you drive around with it, the quieter it gets. The Uniden can do that too, but it's a manual process. This guy has some other benefits as well, things like it has a light sensor here, so adjusting the display brightness can be done automatically when it gets bright outside, like right now, or at night, and it gets darker. It can change the display brightness automatically. If you pair it with your cell phone, run Escort Live, the app, it can give you a speed limit displayed right there on screen. Not always accurate and not always available, but a cool option to have. It's got, you know, live support, so you've got the real-time alerts to and from the cloud to get notified with other people's alerts. So this guy does have some advantages over the Uniden. Is the Uniden a better choice? For most people, I think so. And the reason I say that is, well, again, the performance is much better. You've got all, well, not all the same features, a lot of the same core features, like the lockouts. They're manual here, you don't have the speed limit information and whatnot, but you have significantly better performance. This guy, it's actually a digital detector too. It was Escort's, you know, take on taking one of their older detectors and then kind of digitizing it to give you, in theory, crazy performance and BSM filtering and all that. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. Performance is pretty good. It's not all up there. BSM filtering is pretty good. A lot of the other detectors are actually better. Now, as far as which one is better, I wish, again, I had a good answer for you. I'm going to lean actually towards the Uniden, especially when you put it into kind of, you know, city mode. This guy has, you know, a highway mode and a city mode, which it just calls auto mode, same thing. Full sensitivity at high speed, reduced sensitivity at low speed. Something else to consider is kind of what Escort has done with this detector. So the Max and the Max 2 came out. They originally retailed for $500 and then added Bluetooth to the detector built in instead of in the power cable, retailed for $550. Eventually the price started to come down, and then they decided to revamp their Escort 9500iX. Well, they updated that with the Escort iX. That detector retails for $500, but what they were finding was the Max was actually cannibalizing sales of the iX. You see, compared to the iX, this guy has literally all the same features except for the trick magnetic mount. This one has a magnetic mount too, but it's a little bit different. This guy has all the same features, better performance, better filtering, but costs less money. So, I mean, I even asked Escort, like, why would somebody get an iX? And they didn't really have a good answer for that because the Max 2 was available. Surprise, surprise, they've since discontinued the Max and the Max 2. You can still find them online. The Max you can find for a little bit over $300. The Max 2, currently the price on it is around $450. Now, the prices for these guys tend to yo-yo and bounce all over the place, so it's hard to really pinpoint and say what the price is. Plus, the detectors have been discontinued, but will still be available for a long time because for whatever reason, that's how it works with Escort detectors. So, discontinued, but still readily available. The price of this guy is currently $450. It'll probably be different by the time you guys are watching this video, because that's how it works. But, I mean, it's now still less expensive than the iX, but Escort's like, well, we'll just drop this. We'll give you a worse performing detector with worse filtering for more money. Haha! Escort strategy. Uniden strategy? How about a better performing detector with better filtering for less money? So on that standpoint, I'm more of a fan of how Uniden is approaching it, a little bit less of a fan of kind of what Escort is doing with some of this. So you can still get this guy. I really like the automation capabilities. I mean, you know, automatic screen brightness and lockouts and all that kind of stuff, right? You've got the Bluetooth stuff for the app with Escort Live. If you got the Uniden, just run Waze on your phone and you can get alerts that way too. You'll actually get more alerts because a lot more people use Waze than use Escort Live, so get a lot more alerts. But again, that's more manual too. You can't have your detector automatically get that information for you, you know? So I'm not really all that sold on getting a Max 2, especially because the price has gone way up and it's become discontinued. That's kind of weird. If we compare it to the iX for $500, compared to this guy, which will just blow it out of the water in terms of performance, better filtering, $100 less, like, Uniden wins. So if you're comparing any of those detectors, I think I would go for this guy. Yes, the GPS lockouts are manual. I've got a video that'll teach you how to use them and when to use them and when not to use them. But that's not really too big of a deal. With this guy, I think it's actually going to be worth it. Manual lockouts, but much better detector, much better performance. So between the Max series detectors, the iX, and the Uniden, my vote is for the Uniden. Next, we'll go ahead and take a look at the Escort Max 360. Now, the Max 360 is a similar idea with the Max 2, automatic lockouts, Bluetooth built in, all that kind of stuff, but it adds a rear antenna right here to give it directional information, or arrows. Right here, it's got arrows to locate the source of the threat, and that's actually really handy. That's something that gives this guy a clear advantage over something like the Uniden, which is, I mean, a great detector, but it doesn't have arrows. In practice, I mean, you can figure out a lot of this kind of stuff just based on the ramp up. As you get closer to the signal will beat more rapidly here. You know, the signal strength will get stronger. So even without arrows, you can tell a lot just by listening to the detector. However, there are times when the arrows are really useful, maybe especially at night when you can't really see things very well, or it's tough to see hills or curves and figure out how that correlates to the signal strength the detector's telling you. Or if you just pop onto the highway, what if a cop is way behind you? You may respond differently than a cop is way up ahead of you, right? So having the arrows in practice can be really helpful. Will it help save you a ticket? There's times when it may, there's times when it may not. You know, there's actually been a lot of debate over the past couple days of like, should you get a detector with arrows as opposed to this guy? And some people are like, yes, you know, you should get one with arrows. Some people are like, no, I don't really need them. So I don't really have a good answer. Personally, I find arrows to be really, really helpful. I don't think they're totally necessary, but I think in practice, I personally really like the arrows. I've kind of gotten used to not having them because I've been running other detectors like the Uniden or even the Radenso XP before that, and truth be told, I haven't really missed them, but at the same time, I haven't had a whole ton of encounters. I've wanted a detector that's really quiet and chilled out and relaxed, and so to me, what's more important is like a detector with good filtering than the arrows day to day for my commutes. But that really depends on where I'm driving, my own preferences for the day, etc. And for other people, they may have other priorities too. So anyway, with that said, with this guy, I think this is going to give you some features that the Uniden maybe doesn't. It's got, you know, your arrows, it's got automatic lockouts, and those are probably two of the biggest ones. The display brightness can change automatically. You've got your speed display right there, or speed limit rather. You can pair it with your phone for your real-time alerts to and from the cloud, or just run Waze again with the Uniden. So I think this guy does have some benefits over the Uniden. Should you get it? Is it worth it? Well, this guy retails for $650. Again, price fluctuates just like with the Maxes. I think I looked today and it was like $600. Again, the Uniden is $200 less for better performance and I think better filtering. Again, I can't say for sure. I know that's kind of a question mark here in the video, but as far as performance, yeah, better performance. And if you're looking for a detector with crazy range, especially if you're driving out in the desert, or even here where I live in the Pacific Northwest, we've got trees and hills and curves and mountains and things that can really block and absorb radar and reduce the range of a radar detector. When I need performance and all the detection range I can get, this is a great one, kind of like the Redline, you know, but this guy also has good filtering too for around town, which the Redline didn't. The Max has good filtering as well, not sensational, not great, but good. And for most people, if you just want a plug and play detector, I think that's going to be really the main benefit here. Plus, of course, the arrows in the front. Otherwise, if you don't really need the arrows, I'd say go for this guy. This is a great pick for performance and, well, everything else that we've been talking about throughout this video as well. Now next, let's go ahead and talk about the Valentine One. This is going to be similar to the Max 360 in that, we've got the same debate with the arrows. Are they helpful? Do you need them? Yes, no, that kind of stuff. But the price is a lot less. The Max 360 retails for $650. Maybe you can find it for $600, maybe a little less, whatever. This guy retails for $400, which is the same price as the R3. Now, this guy does not have all the same features. It doesn't have a GPS chip built in, so you actually do need an external Bluetooth adapter, and then pair it with your phone to use your phone's GPS and a third-party app to add your GPS lockouts and low-speed muting. You can do that with Savvy, but low-speed muting and frequency display. This guy has arrows, but there is no frequency display, so you can't read that to figure out is it 34/7 or all that kind of stuff, Identifying a band with just a red dot can be a little bit difficult at night. This guy makes it a lot easier to tell what's going on. This guy makes it easier to figure out where the signal is located with the arrows. They work very well. They're the best arrows out of any company that does arrows. V1's been doing arrows for, 20-something years? So they've got them working really well at this point. It's a very solid, refined, reliable detector. It's one of my favorites, always has been, and probably always will be. I think it's a great detector. I do think it's a little bit difficult for people to program because, you either have to do it with a dial and look up codes and all this kind of stuff, or you have to pair it with your phone, and the programming can be a little bit complex. Unlike the Max 360, which is a good plug-and-play detector, this one is more suitable for people who are comfortable learning some of the details and becoming more of a radar detector enthusiast and spending time programming and customizing and researching custom sweeps and some of the more advanced and complicated stuff. So I don't think it's as good of a general purpose detector, but if you're willing to do a little bit of the work, as I mentioned in my other videos, I think it's a great choice, maybe even instead of the Max 360. That's actually what the 360 was designed to compete against, was this guy here. Now, this guy does not have arrows. Kind of putting them head to head, better performance, no arrows. Worse performance, yes arrows. Pick and choose, which one's more important to you? I think a lot of times, obviously it would be great to have both, right? Sometimes I find the arrows actually really helpful in practice. Sometimes I don't really need them. I just want a quieter detector. And personally, I really like a detector that it doesn't require me to pair a phone or have to look at the phone screen to, see everything and do everything. I used to actually really like that, and I liked having phones and mounts and concealed displays and all this kind of stuff. Like, I liked having my car like an airplane cockpit with lights and displays and everything everywhere, But over the past couple years or so, I've kind of wanted to relax and chill out a little bit. I've wanted a more calm, quiet experience, to be perfectly honest. Like this guy, it's great for understanding everything that's going on around you, especially paired with the phone. You can see all the information for every signal. You got constantly arrows blinking, and you got a lot of stuff going on. So when you want to be on point and paying attention, this is a great one for it. You can do something similar with the all threat display and display, the frequency and signal strength and band and everything for the primary signal, and a bunch of information for a bunch of additional signals. So you can see a bunch of information here, but you also have the ability to kind of relax and chill it out a little bit, and I like that. I think this is more of a kind of well-rounded detector in that regard. And personally, I love the V1, but I think I'm just kind of going for more relaxed detectors nowadays, and that's just kind of my own personal preference. Is that the same for you? I don't know. Again, that's up to you. If you want arrows, get a detector with arrows. This guy doesn't have it. You can figure out a lot, again, just by the ramp up in the audio and the signal strength and how that changes based on how you drive, and things will kind of start to make sense. So it's not that big of a deal, but in practice, yeah, there are times still when the arrows are helpful. So again, that's where it kind of comes up to personal preference. Now, something that some people have wondered are well, actually a popular combination. I'll grab the Redline real quick. A lot of people, what they've done is they'll grab a Redline and a V1 and they'll run both detectors at the same time. The idea is you run the Redline for crazy long-range performance, and then the V1 jumps in and with the arrows will help you locate where that source is. That way you get the best of both worlds. You've got, great performance, and then you've also got the arrows to locate the source, and this guy's better on K-band as far as filtering and whatnot with the BSM filter and lockouts and all that. So they'll run this guy on Ka-band and on K-band, whereas this guy may be just Ka-band. So that's something a lot of people have done. Now, generally running two radar detectors at the same time is not a good idea. They will interfere with each other in a way where they'll negatively impact the performance. This guy can reduce the range of this guy, which kind of defeats the purpose. They'll cause each other to false alert or maybe even miss alerts, which can be problematic. So typically what people do is they space them out as far as possible on opposite ends of the windshield, just to reduce and minimize any chances of interference. Anyway, something people have been wondering is like, well, how compatible are these two detectors? Could you do the same thing, you know? Maybe run this guy for your high-end performance, and he's got, you know, good filtering as well, so you could leave K-band on, but run this guy to get your initial alerts, and then you've also got this guy to help you locate the source of the threat, and I think that's a cool idea. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea, again, because of the interference issues. It's almost never a good idea to run two detectors in practice, and with the Spectre testing I've done, this guy is immune in practice to driving around, but it is a little bit more detectable than the Redline. The Redline is a little bit more stealth. So based on just that alone, which may or may not be the whole story, this guy might be a little bit safer to run with another detector, whereas this guy might be a little bit less safe. So I don't know, and if I were to guess, I don't think it would be a good idea to run both detectors at the same time. And so, oh, actually something I have seen was when I was driving around with these two guys at the same time, I did notice that this guy would false the Redline around 35.5-ish, so I had to disable, you know, segment 8 and run just like 2 and 5, basically, on Ka-band. So I did notice this guy was falsing this guy, so that is something I've noticed, and based on that, I mean, spreading them out helped, but based on that, it may not necessarily be a good idea to run both detectors. So it, I think, is going to be kind of an either-or thing. If you want the arrows, get a detector with arrows. If you want something just kind of more plug-and-play, easy to use and integrated, which I really like that nowadays. That wasn't really my priority before, but it kind of is now. If that's the case, get a detector that has GPS built in, like the, what's it, the Uniden R3 here. If you don't need the GPS at all, fine, just get the R1, you know? Now, finally, we're going to take a look at the Stinger VIP. Now, the Stinger VIP, it's a totally different detector. This is a remote mount detector. This is actually one of the antennas designed to be installed in the grille of your car. And then you've got a display inside your car and all that kind of stuff. So it's a completely different class of detector. It's also a different price class. This guy's retail price starts at $2,500. There's a 10% off coupon you can get, but still, it's a completely different league than a detector that, you know, costs $400 retail, you know, or without GPS, $300. The thing is, this guy is able to outperform the Stinger, and you guys have seen that in the test results. Does that mean that, you know, the Stinger sucks and that you know, look at what Uniden did? Not necessarily. There's a bunch of other things besides performance that we should talk about. So they both have GPS lockouts, but this guy is automatic. This guy, they're manual. When it comes to BSM filtering, the Stinger is actually more effective. It's the only radar detector on the market that is able to filter out Hondas and Acuras, and there's quite a few of those out on the road. Other detectors, pretty much everything else, is going to false to those cars unless you disable K-band or just something like that, you know? So if you want something that can filter out those cars, this is an option. If you live up in Canada, Alberta, or Quebec, where the MRCD is in use, a low-powered, difficult-to-detect radar gun, you need a radar detector that has MRCD support. The Stinger is one of the few detectors that has that. This guy does not detect the MRCD. If you want arrows, you guys know this one doesn't have arrows. This one has the option to give you arrows. If you get a second antenna, it's another $1,500. It's not cheap. If you get a rear antenna as well, you can now have the support for directional information or arrows. They didn't work for a little while, but Stinger actually just released a firmware update, so now you can have arrows with the Stinger. If you want to directly integrate your radar detector with a laser jammer, you don't have to do that, but if you wanted to, Stinger has a set of laser jammers that you can get to pair with their radar detector. They're super small and tiny and compact, and so if you want something stealthy, they've got some effective laser jammers that you can pair with this guy. So there's definitely some benefits here to go with this guy as opposed to this guy. Does this guy outperform the Stinger? Yes. Is that kind of crazy considering this guy, you know, starts at $2,500? Yes, but there are other things as well besides just performance alone that would justify the cost of the Stinger. Should you get one of these? Again, that's up to your budget, your preferences, your needs. Do you want something with, you know, even more advanced blind spot filtering and automatic lockouts and arrows and MRCD detection and all that kind of stuff, you know? So, yeah, again, it's kind of like, wow, that this guy can beat the Stinger, but this guy has a lot of other stuff besides, you know, just the performance. You've still got great performance here, even though it's not as good here, but it's got a lot of other things to offer besides just performance alone. And I guess that's kind of one of the big takeaways of this video is, you know, performance is one big aspect of radar detectors, but there's other things too, like the BSM filtering. I wish I had a little bit better information for you guys and more specifics and details. That we'll just kind of see over time as this stuff continues to come out. You know, maybe you want a detector with auto lockouts or arrows or MRCD detection or whatever else. You know, Radenso is going to be releasing an MRCD version of their PSE. The Redline, there's the international version of the Redline. You know, there's the Net Radar, which I didn't cover in this video. That has MRCD detection. So, you know, there's definitely different ways of going about all this kind of stuff. But for those of you guys who were wondering about, you know, the new Uniden and how it compares to a lot of the other detectors, the two main ones that you guys have been asking me about was the DFR7 and the V1, by the way, which is interesting, which makes sense. So for those of you guys who've been wondering about the comparison, this is just kind of a quick run through of a lot of the different top detectors and how the Uniden compares to that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope this has been helpful for you guys. So cool stuff with the Uniden. A lot more stuff we're going to be figuring out once the detector is, you know, officially released and they start officially shipping and you guys start getting them, and we get a lot more sample data and comparisons and people sharing their experiences and test results. Like, one thing that you guys have been asking me is whether or not these results are reflective of production grade hardware. The hardware, as far as the antennas and everything, are the same. The firmware, there are still some changes that they're making. The display, they are going to be changing the display a little bit for the production hardware just to make them compatible with polarized sunglasses. But in terms of the hardware radar detector stuff, that's all the same. Firmware, they're probably going to be tweaking the BSM filtering and giving us more control over filtering and whatnot. But otherwise, it looks like that should be representative of what we're going to see once this guy, you know, does hit production and start shipping here at the end of May. So anyway, that's a look at the Uniden R1 R3 and how it compares to everything else. So awesome. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.